The final day of the debate of the 80th United Nations General Assembly took place on this Monday. The event was marked by calls for multilateralism in order to achieve world peace. In Ecuador, President Daniel Noboa increases the number of militarized areas in the country in response to the 8th day of national strike. The humanitarian Flotilla global Sumud is approaching the Gaza Strip in an attempt to break the Israeli aid blockade. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. On this Monday, the final day of debate of the 80th United Nations General Assembly took place. The event was marked by calls for multilateralism in order to achieve world peace. World leaders have been meeting for several days at the United Nations headquarters in New York to discuss the urgent need for reform of the organization so that it can deal with the problems that threaten human rights worldwide. In this sense, several nations denounced the Israeli genocide against the population of Gaza, recognizing before the international community the right of Palestine to be a free and sovereign state. Also in this scenario, many speakers agreed with the call to end the U.S. blockade of Cuba and to cease U.S. military expansion that undermines the zone of peace in Latin America and the Caribbean. And the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Nicaragua, Denis Moncada, reiterated the country's recognition to the State of Palestine, as well as its support for all Latin American and Caribbean countries that also deal with U.S. unfair sanctions.
We once again reiterate our unequivocal solidarity with Cuba and Venezuela. Nicaragua and the Sandinista Popular Revolution fully identify with the battles and indispensable victories that we are building in these lands of freedom, dignity, and sovereignty. They shall know that we will not sell out or surrender, never.
In this context, the Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation of Honduras, Javier Bussoto, called for international solidarity to achieve world peace and reiterated Honduras' recognition of the Palestinian state.
No rhetorical justification can legitimize the violation of sovereignty or the subjugation of nations. That is why today, before this General Assembly, we repeat our recognition of the State of Palestine, in line with our historic commitment and with our unwavering stance in favor of peace, security, and the coexistence of two states in the Middle East.
And the representative of Honduras also condemned the blockade against Cuba and the military interference in Latin America and the Caribbean.
Based on our unwavering respect for sovereignty, the self-determination of people, and human rights. That is why we denounce the illegal unilateral sanctions that throttle economies and condemn people to misery. These measures, such as those imposed against Cuba for decades now, must cease immediately. We unreservedly condemn all forms of foreign occupation and threats of military interference in our hemisphere. They are totally unacceptable. Measures such as these mean denying people's rights to live in free sovereign states. This right is inalienable, and its recognition cannot continue to be postponed or manipulated.
And Venezuela's National Council for Sovereignty and Peace met with the diplomatic corps Monday and affirmed its commitment to peace and against the U.S. violent rhetoric and actions against the Bolivarian nation. During the meeting, the President of the National Assembly, Jorge Rodriguez, and the nation's Executive Vice President, teleSUR Rodriguez, emphasized that almost all sectors of Venezuelan society agree on the need to maintain peace in the country and to face military aggression. They also insisted on the need to defend the Caribbean as a zone of peace, free of hostile actions, and warned about the worldwide expansion of fascism. The Council highlighted the effectiveness of the national drills held across the country, where Venezuelans expressed their commitment to defending the nation's sovereignty. And the Secretary General of the United Socialist Party of Venezuela, Diosdado Cabello, highlighted the results of the national drill against natural disasters and armed conflict held across the country. Cabello warned the extremists not to underestimate the unity, the strength, and the determination of Venezuela's people's power, the state agencies, and the Great Patriotic Pulse in Mount Bolivar. The political leader also announced that the party's 5th Congress will hold its plenary session this week to adapt the structures and provide better responses to the country in the current situations. The drills were carried out in response to the call of President Nicolás Maduro. And on Saturday, President of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, participated by video conference in the 29th International Seminar Parties and a New Society organized by the Mexican Labor Party. President Maduro began his speech with a heartfelt welcome and thanked those present for their support of the Venezuelan cause. The President emphasized the importance of exposing the reality of his country in the face of the siege of U.S. imperialism. He denounced the aggressions and the attempt to plunder Venezuelan resources, calling for unity in the struggle for sovereignty and political stability in Latin America and the Caribbean. The Venezuelan head of state also emphasized that the region deserves shared prosperity, free from tutelage and threats.
Larga, profunda, e intensa la historia que hemos vivido.
The history we have lived through is long, deep, and intense, and at its center has been a dispute, the dispute over a nationalist, Latin Americanist, democratic, popular, alternative to capitalism, to exploitation, to subordination, and dependency, and the determination of the United States empire is to impose on us a model that was always called neo-colonial, and now purports to be a directly colonial model to subjugate us, enslave us, bring about a change of regime, and steal our oil, gas, mineral, and gold wealth, land, water, etc., and to try to destroy, from the roots up, the project of Bolivar, the idea of Bolivar, the historical example that we carry in our blood, as the heritage of the Venezuelan people, which is the project of continental emancipation.
We have our first break coming up. Remember, you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. In Ecuador, President Daniel Noboa increases the number of militarized zones in the country in response to the 8th day of the national strike. The Confederation of Indigenous Nationalities of Ecuador, CONAI, has condemned the enforcement and described it as an ongoing massacre. The organization also denounced President Noboa's desperate attempt at repression following the murder of communal leader Efraín Fuertes by security forces, which has been called a state crime against indigenous leaders. According to official records, the actions of state police and agencies have resulted in a total of 48 injured, 100 arrests, and 109 complaints of human rights violations. And on Sunday, the members of the Association of Directors and Screenwriters of Ecuador expressed their energetic rejection to the violence perpetrated by the government of Daniel Noboa against peaceful protests that has left tragic results, including the murder of a community member and several wounded. In this context, filmmakers call on the government and the armed forces to respect international laws and treaties. They also urged to continue documenting the events in the streets in a context where signal blockades have been reported in the city of Otavalo, limiting communication and the possibility of reporting on the situation. And Uruguayan President Yamandu Orsi convened urgently his security cabinet to address the attack perpetrated against acting Prosecutor General Mónica Ferrero. According to authorities, the attack was not on a person, but an attempt to shake an institution, since Ferrero is a career prosecutor known for anti-narcotics work. Last Sunday morning, 2 individuals fired shots and detonated an explosive device at the prosecutor's residence, causing no injuries to the official. The police are investigating the presence of explosives after discovering a pit dog in the courtyard of the house. Authorities found the getaway vehicle burned and have arrested 2 people linked to the Los Albin criminal gang, known for its involvement in drug trafficking. And in Mexico, torrential rains battered Mexico City, causing severe flooding, damage to 293 homes, and widespread disruptions in public transportation. The Mexico City government reported through its social media that an impressive volume of 30 million cubic meters of water fell over the city, equivalent to filling more than 12,000 Olympic-sized swimming pools. According to official reports, the boroughs most affected were Iztapalapa, Tláhuac, and Gustavo Amadero. Authorities informed that exhaustive surveys are already being conducted to determine the total number of properties and families affected in order to channel the necessary aid. And on Monday, Typhoon Boualoi made landfall in Vietnam, triggering floods, airport closures, and evacuations of thousands of residents. The National Weather Agency reported that Typhoon Boualoi caused waves of up to 8 meters high, accompanied by destructive winds and torrential rains. According to Vietnamese authorities, the typhoon has caused the death of at least 12 people, left 2 injured, and rescue teams are searching for 17 missing fishermen. In this scenario, many affected regions have remained without electricity and internet access, making it extremely difficult to accurately assess the damage and ongoing relief efforts. Now, our second break coming up. Before we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English, there you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverage, and much more. Follow our page and activate the notification button to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. A financial break, don't go away. Welcome back. In Palestine, at least 50 people were killed by Israel in the Gaza Strip after this escalation of attacks in the last 24 hours. Authorities in the enclave also reported that around 184 Palestinians were injured after the latest days of bombing by Israel. They also affirmed that this attack has raised the number of people killed by Zionist forces since October 7, 2023 to more than 66,000 deaths, with more than 168,000 injured, most of them women, children, and elderly. They are once again calling on the international community to take action to stop the massacre and the humanitarian crisis. And the humanitarian global Sumud Flotilla is approaching the Gaza Strip in a final attempt to break the Israeli aid blockade. This way, the leading vessel reported that in the next few hours it will reach Palestinian waters despite repeated Zionist attempts to stop the mission. The flotilla is expected to arrive in the next 48 hours to provide food and other supplies to the victims of the Israeli siege in the Gaza Strip. In this context, flotilla members reiterated they will not be intimidated by Tel Aviv and said to be prepared for all scenarios to be faced upon reaching the Palestinian enclave. And the government of Spain banned the transit of U.S. military aid to Israel through the military bases of Rota in Cádiz and Morón de la Frontera in Sevilla. Both bases have historically been used by the United States for military supplies. However, Spanish authorities emphasize that they are facilities on the Spanish sovereignty, so any movement of armament must be authorized by Madrid. This announcement comes amid growing international protests and denunciations about the genocide perpetrated by Israel in the Gaza Strip. The measure prevents American U.S. planes and ships loaded with weapons, ammunition, or military equipment for Israel from using the bases located in Spanish territory as a bridge. The Yemeni armed forces announced that its Houthi units attacked several targets in Tel Aviv in response to Israel's genocidal crimes and escalation in Gaza. The strikes were confirmed by the armed forces official spokesman Yahya Sadi, who stated that the operation carried out with a multi-warhead hypersonic ballistic missile forced thousands of Israeli settlers to flee to shelters. Moreover, the military also reported a parallel attack with 2 drones on targets in Eilat in the south of occupied Palestine. In their statement, the Houthis reaffirmed their firm stance in support of the Palestinian people, vowing to these actions will continue as long as the Zionist offensive and the blockade of Gaza persist. Also on Monday, Donald Trump reiterated his threat to impose steep tariffs on films made outside the United States, claiming that his country's film industry has been damaged by others. The president declared that he will impose a 100% tariff on any and all films made outside the United States. However, no details have yet been provided on his plans, nor a timeline for when these tariffs could be enacted. The measure is an attempt to recover the U.S. film industry, a major sector of the economy affected after the Hollywood strikes and the COVID virus pandemic.
Very soon.
In the state of Oregon on the west coast of the United States is suing President Donald Trump for deploying military forces under the order to use full force. This way, State Attorney General Dan Rayfield initiated legal proceedings asserting that the president has exceeded his authority, while the policies of the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of War have escalated tensions in the city of Portland. Peaceful protests have turned into violent clashes between protesters and security forces around the headquarters of Immigration and Customs Enforcement. The Attorney General's office assured that the lawsuit aims to protect Oregon and its values. And the U.S. Department of Homeland Security reported that at least 11 demonstrators were arrested in Chicago on Sunday during a protest against anti-immigrant raids carried out by Immigration and Customs Enforcement. The demonstration was confronted with a large deployment of the ICE and Border Patrol agents. The detainees were described as violent troublemakers by federal authorities who claimed to have seized arsenals of alleged firearms and explosives near an ICE processing facility. This operation has been denounced by Chicago and Illinois authorities as an act of intimidation. The situation reflects the growing tension between federal authorities and cities governed by Democrats who refuse to break the law to deport immigrants. In other topics, in Russia, the governor of Moscow, Andrei Vorovyov, reported the death of 2 civilians due to a Ukraine drone attack. The air defense forces managed to destroy 4 unmanned aerial vehicles over the towns of Voskresensk and Kolomna in the Russian capital. In Voskresensk, a residential building caught fire due to the attack, killing 2 people, a 76-year-old woman and her 6-year-old grandson. This incident highlights the risk faced by residential areas in the region because of the escalation of cross-border attacks targeting civilians. Well, like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. So join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thanks for watching.